Did you say something?
I said hi to the camera because
Oh, okay. Because it's the next episode of Top 10 Video.
yes.
Top 10 video. Top 10
Greetings, professors, and welcome to Top 10 Video. It's the podcast where me, Robi, and Hollipop is dragged along as I revisit the years I worked at a small mom and pop video store called Top 10 Video way back in 1996. Well, started in 96 and went through 2002. And we have already done the first 2 months I worked there. We did November of 96 and December of 96. And we have now arrived, Happy New Year, at January of 1997. And she is already falling asleep. What was up with Holly in January of 1997? What were you doing?
I don't know what I was doing in January of 97.
Come on, you don't remember that? It was only almost 30 years ago.
Oh, well, like I was in college. Like I don't know exactly what I was doing.
But it was your second semester in college. You don't remember what classes you were taking?
No.
Okay, neither do I. All I know is I was a mass comm major at this point, and that did not last.
Yeah.
Wasn't pretty.
What was I majoring in? I think I was majoring in social studies education.
That sounds
At the
riveting.
time. Yeah.
History. Who doesn't like history? Speaking of history, we're going back. We're going back to January 31st, in fact, because this is what I discovered in planning for this podcast, and we've had some issues with my planning, believe me. When I started, I thought I was just going to be able to go online and find what the top 10 video rentals were in a given month. Turns out, not so much. Because different movies came out every week, much like they do now. And so every week, the top 10 list changed. And in some cases, it was drastic, and in some cases, it would just change a little bit. Yeah, I think we've got it straight now, and I have a source. Billboard magazine. I'm going to have to give them a shout out at some point on this.
You just did.
No, but it's not actual Billboard that does this magazine. It's someone else who has archived and scanned every issue of Billboard magazine ever. And they have it on the internet. And so that has been a great resource to me.
We thank you for not having anything better to do in your life.
Yes. When I first started the podcast, I was not aware of that site. I discovered it a few weeks back, and so it's really easy now to sort of plan ahead at what the movies were. So January 31st, this is where we are now. January 31st, 1997, the number one movie that was rented in video stores was the John Travolta film Phenomenon. Do you remember that?
I remember it vaguely.
Yeah, it was a true phenomenon. It actually stayed on the charts, I think, all the way until April. It was still in the top 10. Pretty crazy. I remember very little about the movie. All I know is that this was part of the John Travolta Sots. That doesn't work.
The John Travolta phenomenon.
No, because remember, he was famous for Grease, and he was famous in the 70s and the 80s. And then,
so his resurgence.
Exactly, but there's a term, like, when Matthew McConaughey came back, they called it the McConaissance, right? So I was trying to do it with John Travolta.
I've never heard that before.
There's a thing online. Look it up. It's there, people. Anyway, that was the number one.
I've always liked Matthew McConaughey.
We're not talking about him. Actually, we are, because he was in the number 2 movie that week, A Time to Kill.
Hmm.
This was not even his reconnaissance. This was when he first sort of came on the scene. This was the big movie that made Matthew McConaughey.
It was a good movie. It was based on a John Grisham novel.
John Grisham, yes. All the Rage, John Grisham. After The Firm with
From
Tom
Mississippi.
Cruise. Is he from Mississippi?
Mhm.
Shout out to Grisham.
Good
What part of Mississippi? Do you know?
I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure he's from Mississippi.
All
I
right.
mean,
Well, we'll all take your word for it. Sure, you're accurate there. A Time to Kill, good movie, big cast. Not just McConaughey. We had Sandra Bullock. We had Samuel L. Jackson. We had other people that were in that movie that I don't remember.
all those extras.
Number 3 in January 31st of 1997 was The Rock. And this was the movie that put Michael Bay on the map. Huge hit. Nicolas Cage, Sean Connery. This one came out actually the previous month, so it's still on the charts here. Number 4 was Tin Cup.
Rene Russo.
Kevin Costner. It was written and directed by the same guy who did Bull Durham, and this was his re-teaming with Kevin Costner to see if they could have another big hit. I want to say that Tin Cup did better on home video than it had done in the theaters. It did okay, but it wasn't like Tin Cup actually is another movie that's on the charts here. A few months it sort of hangs around the top 10. Number 5 on the top 10 chart. One of your favorites, Kingpin.
I have impeccable tastes.
Well, you have some kind of taste. I mean, you married me, so.
That is true. Got amazing taste.
Yeah. Farrelly Brothers. This was their follow-up to Dumb and Dumber, I believe. It's kind of interesting because there's a connection between Jim Carrey and the movie we're actually going to talk about, which is number 6 on the top 10 chart, The Nutty Professor. We'll come back to it. All right, number 7, January 31st, 1997, was Keanu Reeves, Rachel Weisz, Morgan Freeman, Chain Reaction. This is the movie where Keanu had put on a few pounds, had really long hair, and he just runs around in this movie while people shoot at him in the snow. And there's something about cold fusion or something. They're trying to solve a...
Oh, that's the one about cold fusion. I knew there was a movie that came out about cold fusion, and that must have been it.
Maybe. It's Chain Reaction. Number 8 was Fled.
Never heard of the movie.
Never heard of the movie. Fled. There was a Baldwin brother in it. I know that much. And Lawrence Fishburne. 2 prisoners. They escape. They're on the lam, on the run. They're fleeing.
They fled.
That's why it's called Fled.
Okay.
I don't think it was that great. I remember watching it.
Tracks.
It doesn't really stick in my brain. I don't remember much from it. Number 9, one of your favorites.
I've never even seen that movie before.
Matilda. We've got Danny DeVito and his wife. I want to say Danny DeVito directed this movie. I think it was a DeVito family project.
It's like a project, just kind of like our podcasts and all of our YouTube videos.
His wife was in it from Cheers. What's her name? Why can't I think of her name?
Rhea Perlman.
Rhea Perlman. Shout out to Rhea. And number 10.
Oh, we're waiting for it.
It's drum roll. We should have gone in reverse order, right? Was Independence Day. It was hanging on. It came out in December. And it was basically in the top 5 for most of January, but by the end of January, it's all the way down to 10. But The Nutty Professor, the previous month, was number 3, has dropped down to the middle of the list, number 6. Sherman is still hanging on by a thread.
And I was going to dress up for it, but I've got enough fat already that I don't really have to.
It's not. I saw The Nutty Professor at the theater. it was kind of a big movie when it came out. It was one of those. Eddie Murphy had not had a hit in a while. He had made a few movies in the '90s that were, I guess the word would be middling. Boomerang, and there's the one where he was the vampire in Brooklyn. I don't know. They did okay, but they weren't like mega hits where everybody had to go see the movies. Like in the '80s when he made Beverly Hills Cop, and he did make Beverly Hills Cop 3 in the '90s, and that's not a good one. So anyway, he was on the down slope, and he needed a big hit, and this script came along. It's a remake of a 1950s Jerry Lewis movie, also called The Nutty Professor. And this was the first film that he saw.
It's the first film that he saw.
Yeah.
We're going back way.
When Eddie Murphy was a child, The Nutty Professor was the first movie he saw. Now, I have no way of knowing that.
You don't.
But I have a feeling that he saw this movie when he was a kid, and when he read that somebody wrote a revised script of The Nutty Professor, I think he was interested because...
It's pure speculation.
It is, but Eddie Murphy is a big fan of slapstick comedy, sort of physical comedy. He likes, if you'll recall, in Coming to America, he had done different characters in the barbershop. Mm-hmm. And I think he liked that.
We did a podcast on it.
Yes, we did a
when
podcast.
we did our TLV cast podcast.
Yes, go check that out. Still on
It was pretty good.
Spotify.
I think it was a pretty good one.
Yeah, it was a good one. But anyway, so he did all the barbershop characters there, and I think he enjoys doing that, playing these big, larger-than-life characters. And so when this idea came, it was switched. In the Jerry Lewis movie, he was a nerd who comes up with a formula to become a hip, cool guy. But in this movie, he is overweight, and he comes up with a formula to lose weight. So basically, this is like Ozempic, right? I mean, he basically came up with a way to dramatically lose weight in mere seconds, altering your DNA.
But this was a little different. It increased his testosterone, which is where the problem is.
Yes, therein lies the problem. It basically turns him into the most obnoxious character ever. Well, that's not true. Dave Chappelle's character in this movie is probably the most obnoxious
Well,
character ever.
Dave was the most obnoxious until he put Dave Chappelle in his place.
He did, yes.
On stage in front of everybody.
Yeah, this movie was directed by Tom Shadyac. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
I don't know if you're pronouncing it correctly either. And probably 95% of the people out there don't know if you're pronouncing it correctly, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, they've never even heard of Tom Shadyac.
And Tom Shadyak's like, what?
That's not how my name is pronounced. Tom Shadyac directed Jim Carrey in Bruce Almighty.
Okay.
He directed Jim Carrey in Ace Ventura, Pet Detective. I'm not sure on that.
Ace Ventura, Pet Detective. Look at that. You're right.
He also did Robin Williams' Patch Adams. He sort of went downhill there. He did Liar Liar with Jim Carrey. Yeah, Tom Shadyac at this point had a pretty good track record of directing comedies. And I think Eddie Murphy originally wanted John Landis to direct The Nutty Professor. I don't think Landis was available. Something came up, and so Tom Shadyac takes over. What were your thoughts here watching The Nutty Professor for the first time?
I thought it was a very enjoyable movie. It kind of just took me back to when movies were just for pure entertainment. You know, it's like...
Well, you say that, but this movie has a pretty strong message.
Well, it does. But, you know, even the part at the beginning with all the hamsters... You know, that was just pure entertainment. Even the extras in the film were entertaining. You know, it's... by the way, I have a hamster story that I want to tell. Can I tell my hamster story? You know, since we're talking about hamsters.
Go for it.
Okay.
What's up with the hamster?
Well, like it just reminded me of Johnny and...
Your hamster's name was Johnny?
Charlie's hamster's name. See, it was my son. I couldn't afford to buy him a decent birthday present, so I bought him a hamster.
Why would a hamster not be a decent birthday present?
Well, you'll find out why it wasn't a decent birthday present.
It's a living creature.
They only had one hamster left at the pet store that we went to.
Okay.
So I got this one hamster. The problem is it had huge testicles.
Okay.
And like when he would run on his little wheel, the testicles would just go on the wheel.
Okay.
A couple months later, though, the hamster passed away. And
What was wrong with him?
I'm starting to think that he may have had testicular cancer.
What was his name?
His name was Johnny.
Johnny.
Johnny the hamster.
So you sure Johnny wasn't Janie with some sort of cancerous growth?
No, it was a boy. I mean, it was clearly he had testicles. So I had to bury him, and I didn't have a shovel, so I had to get one of those little beach shovels. And you know, there's only so much you can dig up with a beach shovel.
There's only so much.
Like, cause like you can't really break it to the grass with a beach shovel. So like I dug a hole and it was kind of shallow. And then like when I buried him the first time, his balls were still sticking up. So I had to, I had to take him out and like take some more dirt out. But like it was just a whole mishap. So the lesson I learned is don't buy a hamster or any animal for anybody as a present. But anyway, I'm sorry, we're talking about the Nutty Professor.
Yeah, I was not expecting that story to be that long. This will now be the longest episode of Top 10 Video ever.
Well, it had to be as big as Johnny's balls.
Okay, yeah. Speaking of Johnny's balls, Sherman is a large man, and he meets a new graduate professor played by Jada Pinkett, Pre Smith.
She's very pretty.
She's okay. I mean, I think she's the weak link in this movie personally because because at the heart of the movie is, yes, it's about Sherman's relationship with himself, who eventually becomes Buddy Love, his alter ego, but it's also his relationship with Miss Purdy.
Yeah. Well, she kind of helps propel the storyline.
But I didn't sense any connection between Eddie Murphy and
She was almost
Jada
too
Pinkett.
attractive, you know, because for, you know what I'm saying?
No.
Me to buy it.
Well, that was the whole point, is that this is his motivating factor. Because he clearly, when he first meets her, he goes through the whole process. He goes to the gym. He goes on a diet. He changes his complete lifestyle in a montage. I mean, he runs up the steps and he's jumping around like Rocky, but hasn't lost a pound. You know, it's the same fat suit he's wearing.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a little unrealistic because I mean, if you actually put in that much work, I think you would have lost a little bit of weight.
No, you've never had to try to lose weight before.
Well,
He has always been very
But this
thin.
is the thing, though. If you do all of those that physical,
The struggle is real.
all of the physical work, but you still eat the same amount of food, therein lies your problem because he's still eating Snicker bars and I mean, he's got a secret drawer in his desk.
Well, sometimes it can be hormonal too. Those
That's
cravings
true.
are hormonal.
Yeah, or
so.
it could be, sometimes it's even if you're taking certain medications that can cause you
to gain weight.
as well. So anyway, he's developing this serum that he's been practicing or experimenting, I guess, on hamsters. And there's this fake overweight hamster.
Oh, it was fake? And it was a guinea pig. It wasn't a hamster.
What?
Wasn't it a guinea pig?
I thought they were all hamsters.
Anyway, it was some sort of rodent.
But it was a giant fake looking rodent. And supposedly it has lost weight due to his experiments.
But it didn't look like it lost that much weight.
No, exactly. That's what I'm saying. It was weird. To me, what they should have done is shown it work on the rodent first, and then he's like, "Wow, that's amazing!" And then he tries it on himself. It's kind of weird that they just keep showing this big.
The rodent never looks skinny, and he's like, "Oh, it's working." No, it's not.
Yeah, they're like, he's lost 2% body fat.
The fattest hamster I've ever seen.
It's
and all the hamster did was sit in the corner. It never even got on a wheel or did anything.
What something you might not realize, but maybe you do realize because of there's these long scenes in this movie where the whole Clump family is sitting around a table just being disgusting, and they're all played by Eddie Murphy, and this one kid who plays like the nephew, and Eddie Murphy plays his mother, the Sherman's mother. He plays his father. He plays his brother.
His grandmother
and his grandmother, and then Sherman. So he's playing all of these characters, and it's really quite impressive. But I find with time, because it's all him, I just feel like it's not as funny as it used to be. Maybe I've grown out of potty humor because it's all potty humor.
I don't think I laughed very much. Like, I remember you and Brent were telling me, I think it was when we were doing the Twister episode, Brent was like, oh yeah, that's a hilarious movie. And I'm like, I was looking forward to it. I'm like, oh, Brent's got a good sense of humor. But I think Brent was looking at it through the lens of him in 1996.
Yes.
Because when I was watching it, I'm like, I mean, it's entertaining, but it wasn't hilarious.
There's some funny stuff. I enjoyed Dave Chappelle's over-the-top crazy comedian character. It was interesting to see him that young, first off. I mean, he's crazy young. He looks like he's almost a teenager, and I don't know how old he was in 1996.
Well, we were crazy young back then,
That's
too.
true. But yeah, I don't know, he's just a different person now. And also he's playing a character. He's not playing Dave Chappelle in this movie. And yeah, I've enjoyed some of the jokes that he was throwing around there.
Yeah.
He's just so over the top, and you know him at who he is now, and so that was kind of funny for me. And I guess this is where the whole fat shaming thing started, right?
I don't know if this is where it started. I think it's always been. Moses may have been the first fat shamer. Or whoever talked about gluttony in the Bible.
Probably.
Well,
there's a difference. There's a difference between doing it to make fun of someone and then doing it because you actually fear for their health. I think it's two different things, because clearly they make the case in this movie that Sherman is from a family. That's why they spend so much time with his family. They're all large people, and clearly there is a wide spectrum of
genetic.
People. It's a genetic thing where they're big boned. We used to say back in the day. Although their family is big boned.
Is that what your family said?
I'm just saying that was
because I came from one of those big boned families.
I'm just saying I used to hear that when I was a kid, like oh, well, she's always been big boned. They didn't say they were fat. They were just like, she's always been big boned. And I'm like, I always wonder, what does that mean? Like, they have.
Well, you actually do have to measure, like, if you're trying to determine like your BMI and everything to see if you're
right.
You have to see if like you measure your wrist to see if you're small boned or like medium.
I'm definitely small boned.
Oh, you're definitely, and I'm actually small boned, so I'm actually overweight because I'm small boned.
Because you're small boned.
Yeah.
So you see, it was a thing. They weren't just pulling that out of their ass. Like, that was a scientific term they were using when they said, "Oh, she's always been big boned."
But big bone doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be obese or anything.
No, not necessarily. You could just be, big boned. All of that said, Sherman basically gets humiliated by young Dave Chappelle, and he goes home and he's flipping the channels, and every television station is saying lose weight. Oh, by the way, Eddie Murphy also plays a Richard Simmons type character who has these health shakes that he's obsessed with. They're not working, clearly, but it's a struggle. It's a struggle that he lives every day, and so he finally breaks down and goes to the lab and consumes
the potion.
The potion. I don't know if you want to call
the
it
formula.
Yeah, it's a formula.
The formula.
And he is turned into what becomes Buddy Love, a crazy, narcissistic, testosterone-fueled.
Like, I'm wondering, is that how people on steroids are?
I don't know, but he was incredibly annoying. Like,
he was. Like, I can't see how she was attracted to him at all.
Even a little bit. Yeah,
I know.
It's not even close. And I think they did it purposefully to have that division between, like, the character of Eddie Murphy that everybody loves, the comedian guy. And then here, he's so obnoxious. But I feel like he almost overplays it because I feel like in his mind, he was thinking, I have to be so over the top that people won't like me. Even
Yeah.
though, because I look just like Eddie Murphy. But
Well,
I
Eddie
need,
Murphy's over the top in almost everything he does.
that is true.
Like Donkey is over the top
That's
from
true.
Shrek.
And if you go back and watch his stand up, which actually that is a cool scene where it starts off really annoying, where he's just screaming in the back and sort of heckling Dave Chappelle, but then he ends up getting back at him and he ends up being on stage. It's probably the first time Eddie Murphy had done stand up since the 80s, and I don't think he's done stand up since.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. But it made the person watching the movie feel good because I mean, you do feel bad for Sherman
Yes.
in the movie.
That first scene when Sherman is still large, it's funny at first. The first few jokes that he makes at Sherman's expense are funny, and then then the music starts playing and it says you can't laugh at this anymore. These jokes aren't funny anymore. And part of me was like, well, that doesn't necessarily mean that they aren't funny anymore. The issue is that Sherman didn't stand up for himself. And I feel like that's what the line was, is that he let that guy win over him.
Yeah.
Because the jokes weren't necessarily, offensive, or I wouldn't consider them offensive. Even if I was a large person, somebody can make fun of me for being skinny. They even say that later in the movie. It's not about what you look, it's your confidence level.
Yeah.
Like you have to have the confidence, and if someone says something about you, you have to have the confidence to say either ignore it and just be like, well, I don't care what you say about me. I am confident in who I am.
Well, you also have to have a sense of humor about your flaws. If people say something that meant to be hurtful, if you have a sense of humor about it, you're not going to be hurt.
Yeah.
And I think that's the lesson is you have to have a sense of humor. Whatever your flaw is, you're going to have to be able to laugh about it because you can just be a victim all the time. And if you're a victim all the time, then your situation's just going to get worse and you're going to get in a deeper hole and you're always going to feel bad.
Drinking blue goo and turning into Buddy Love.
And nobody is going to want to be around somebody that's down all the time because they're the constant victim. Oh, woe is me constantly. But if you're gregarious and you're laughing and you're having fun, regardless of what people think, regardless if I'm a little bit overweight, regardless of if my hair doesn't do anything, I'm going to laugh and make fun of myself. And who gives a crap, Like you have to, and that's the lesson from this movie is you have to embrace your flaws.
Amen, sister. Yeah,
Embrace
your flaws. There's scenes that are completely improvised, by the way, where Eddie Murphy, the scenes with Dave Chappelle and Eddie Murphy, specifically the second one, was almost completely improvised. They knew where they had to get from the beginning of the scene to the end of the scene, but most of it was sort of, they were just making up lines. So a lot of it wasn't written in the script. Also, the dinner table scenes with the family, the clumps, also very much improvised. Eddie Murphy just sort of trying to make everyone laugh. So, part of me thinks some of that should have been written a little bit better because if you've seen the movie, I don't know. To me, some of those scenes haven't held up as well. You can sort of tell the scenes that weren't scripted, and then they get back to the story. It's like they go on for like too long. It's like a 10-minute scene when it really should have just been maybe 3.
But it also kind of goes along with what the character was feeling. Like he was like, okay, I want out of the situation, but it just kept going and going and going because
the first time, yes, but the second time when he's Buddy Love against Dave Chappelle, it was that scene went on, in my opinion, for a little bit too long. It needed to be. We also get to hear Eddie Murphy sing in here, which, he had that big hit in the 80s, right? Party All the Time. You want to sing it? No?
No, I don't remember the song.
My girl wants to party all the time.
Oh, he sang that?
Party all the time.
I didn't realize that was
That's
Eddie
Murphy, yeah. All right, anything else you want to say about the Nutty Professor, Hollipop?
I mean, it was entertaining. I don't think I would watch it again, but it was entertaining.
I didn't laugh as much as I did the first time I saw it in the theater. I mean, the theater was rolling. It was kind of crazy how insane the laughter was in the theater. And this truly was Eddie Murphy's comeback in the 90s. He came back with this. It was a huge hit. It crossed $100 million, that was the mark of a successful movie back then. If you made $100 million in a theater, you were a hit. It was followed up by a sequel a few years later, The Nutty Professor 2, The Clumps. Not as good of a movie, in my opinion. And he also followed it up with another remake of another 1950s comedy, Dr. Dolittle. So, yeah, he sort of had a string of hits after this movie until Norbit. And
I haven't seen Norbit.
and then it all came crashing down again.
See, I didn't see The Nutty Professor in the 90s. I just watched The Nutty Professor. I haven't seen Norbit. I don't think I watched the Dr. Dolittle either. Because I'm such a fan of the old Dr. Dolittle. Like, I like the songs in it and everything.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I would like a remake.
I still haven't watched Robert Downey Jr.'s remake of Dr. Dolittle, which was a huge flop.
I didn't even know Robert Downey
He did. He did it right after Avengers. That was his movie after Avengers Endgame.
Does he sing the songs?
I don't know. It's not a musical, but there's a bunch of CGI animals.
I like musicals.
I haven't seen it. I don't know. I can't comment on it. Anyway, what are we going to rate The Nutty Professor?
All right.
1996.
I didn't fall asleep, so automatically it gets a 5.
Okay.
But I wouldn't watch it again. I'm just going to give it a 5.
Okay, 5. Yes, well, that makes sense. You wouldn't watch it again, and you didn't fall asleep, so it's a 5. I'm gonna go 5.5.
You want to do a 5, but you don't want to give the same score I gave.
No, because I think I liked it a little bit more than you.
Well, you have that special connection to it because you saw it.
Well, here's
when
the
it
thing.
first came out,
I will say this. Back in 96, and in the theater, when we left that theater, everybody felt like $1 million because we had been laughing for pretty much an hour and a half straight. And so back then, I probably would have said it was a 9, coming out of the theater. And then you watch it again on home video, and you're like, okay, it's funny,
You
but...
could afford to go to movies when you were in college?
Yeah, they were only like $5. Actually, matinees were like $3.
I was just scrounging change to get one of those bean burritos from Taco Bell for lunch.
Well,
I don't know. I think you were Mr. Richie Rich in college.
no. Hey, I worked at Top 10 Video, and I made $5.
And that's where you're getting the money. I didn't have a job.
$5.15 an hour at Top 10 Video. It was not... I did not work there for the money. Let's just say that. I worked there for the free movies.
Well, I didn't have a job in college, so maybe that's why you had the money to go see movies.
Yeah. All right. So, Nutty Professor, not blowing our minds here, but I do think that there's a few laughs here. I think the story has a good message. Be happy with, learn to love yourself, but also improve yourself. Like, because I do think that they show all of that stuff, and then he gets the get skinny quick pill without doing all the work, and it basically makes his life a living hell, is what it does.
Yeah, doing the work to become a better person is what builds your character, not just having some magic formula.
But I also think it is good to try to stay in as good of shape as you can, I mean, it's...
Hey, I went for a walk today.
Try to eat healthy, and
I put some spinach on my taco.
Good for you. All right, that's it, folks. We'll be back next month talking about a random list of top 10 video rentals in February of 1997. Please do join us.
Peace out.
The Top 10 Video podcast is produced by D. Robi and is a part of the Introverse podcast network.